"Drop the gun!" I shouted. But it was already too late. The HOA's so-called head of security, dressed in a fake uniform with a crooked hand-sewn badge, was pointing a black Glock straight at my daughter's head. Why? Because she dared to park in the wrong spot for 13 minutes. I stood frozen. My wife was trembling behind me. Neighbors peeking from behind curtains, too afraid to act. And that man, drunk on authority and delusion, was ready to pull the trigger. Then it happened. In 3 seconds. One quick step, one wrist twist, the clatter of metal hitting the pavement. The gun had a new owner. My daughter, who had trained Navy SEALs to survive the horrors of war, stood face to face with him. Gun in hand, fingers safely off the trigger. I've taught people 37 ways to eliminate a target. Are you really trying to make me invent a 38th over a parking violation? She said it, cold as steel. The entire neighborhood held its breath. The real police didn't arrive for another 3 minutes. But the battle had already begun. No one knew it yet. But a resistance was about to rise. An HOA empire, rotting from within for 8 years, was about to crack open. All because they threatened the wrong family. From the outside, Sunny Pines looked like a picture-perfect paradise. Lawns trimmed with laser precision. Flower beds planted with only 4 HOA-approved varieties approved since 2009. And houses painted in neutral elegance, the kind of color they called sophisticated. Unless you were black and living in one. My name is Malik Carter, 65, retired aerospace engineer. 2 decades with Lockheed Martin and NASA. My wife passed early. I've lived here alone for 14 years quietly, obediently, never forgetting to keep the lawn under the 2-inch maximum. I used to believe that following every rule would earn me peace. But in Sunny Pines, a black man is only left alone if he's silent long enough to disappear. Here, the HOA was the law, and Nero Wilder was its self-declared enforcer. Wilder wasn't a cop. He was a former supermarket guard, fired for tackling a black teenager he thought was shoplifting. The boy had nothing on him. A few years later, Nancy Weber, the 3rd-generation HOA president, crowned him head of internal security. Since then, he strutted around in knockoff uniforms, a bogus HOA badge, and a black SUV stamped with community enforcement. He stalked, cited, and harassed anyone who didn't fit. And didn't fit, in Wilder's eyes, almost always meant didn't look like him. I had kept quiet long enough. That changed one June afternoon. When my daughter came home, Kaya Carter, 36 years old, 12 years of military service, a tactical psychologist trainer of Navy SEALs, a black woman I was more proud of than all the awards on my living room wall. She drove a custom-upgraded military Jeep. The kind neighbors stared at it like it was a tank. "I brought some new security gear for you," Kaya said, her voice raspy from exhaustion. "There have been break-ins nearby. These will help you sleep better." She parked in a visitor spot just a few steps from my house. HOA rules. 30-minute max. We began unloading boxes of equipment. As she carried the last camera system inside, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and froze. "It's one of my trainees. His PTSD is spiking. He lost his squad in an ambush in Syria. Today's their death anniversary." She sat down, switched to speaker. I heard the sobbing, the heavy breathing, the smashing of furniture. "Listen to me. Inhale for 4, hold, exhale. You're not there anymore. You survived. Remember the training. Remember what you've overcome." The call lasted nearly 30 minutes, and I sat in silence. Because I knew my daughter just helped save a life. We almost forgot about the Jeep, until the pounding started. Not knocking, pounding, heavy, aggressive, like someone wanted to break the door down. I opened it. Wilder, ed 20 near Marder. Fake uniform. Miss Black Shades, clipboard in hand, a smug smirk. That vehicle exceeded the parking limit by 13 minutes. I've called for a tow. You'll receive a $300 tow charge and a $500 HOA fine. Section 4. Pre and streakers sturm. Before I could respond, Kaya stepped forward. Still in her sweat-drenched t-shirt, looking pale, but her voice didn't waver. I apologize. I just finished a crisis call with a PTSD trainee. I only need 15 more minutes to grab food and go. No intent to violate anything. Polite, one. Calm, sorgdemonstratum. But Wilder wasn't listening. His pride had already taken offense. He stepped closer, eyes locked on Kaya, trying to crush her with his gaze. You think you're special? Around here, we don't do exceptions. See, you and that vehicle are a disgrace to this community. I saw Kaya's fist tighten. That look, I'd seen it before. In boot camp, she stood between danger and her team. And now, as she stared down a self-appointed lawman in our own neighborhood, Sir, I'm just helping my parents. I'm not refusing, just requesting a few extra minutes. It's a reasonable request under the circumstances. Wilder growled. You don't decide what's reasonable here. And then he reached out, grabbed her arm. What happened next? It was pure instinct. And it would become the moment that changed Sunny Pines forever. Wilder reached out, rough for ATM. Without warning, his fingers clamped down on Kaya's arm, still firm from years of SEAL training. You're not going anywhere while I'm talking. He barked, breath reeking of cigarettes and raw entitlement. I couldn't react fast enough, but Kaya didn't need time to think. Combat reflex engaged. In less than a second, her left hand twisted upward, knocking his wrist aside. Right hand shoved across his chest, foot planted, shoulder dropped. Wilder lost balance and stumbled, crashing into my mother's rose bush, planted 10 years ago. Leaves rustled, thorns tore, and the guttural sound of a man who couldn't fathom how he'd just been disarmed. By a woman, a black woman. Wilder scrambled up, shirt torn, blood trickling from his wrist. His sunglasses had fallen, revealing eyes swimming in rage and humiliation. You just assaulted a community enforcement officer. He screamed, his citation papers fluttering around his feet. You'll regret this. I swear I'm calling the cops, and this time, they won't be on your side. Kaya didn't reply. She just breathed deeply, eyes locked on his. I knew that breath wasn't from fear. It was restraint. She hadn't wanted to act. She simply couldn't allow anyone to grab her body like it was a piece of property to be corrected. Wilder stormed off, muttering, dialing furiously. I put a hand on Kaya's shoulder and led her inside. We thought it might be over, until the screech of tires echoed again. I peeked through the curtain, and Wilder had returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. With him was Carl Johnson, the silver-haired man once fined for hanging an American flag at a slightly crooked angle, and a woman I didn't recognize, Zinnia Ramirez, a newly arrived therapist from down the block. She looked confused, clutching a folder, glancing around like she'd been dragged into something she didn't understand. Wilder led the way, clipboard still in one hand, but the other hid something beneath his coat. I wasn't sure what it was, only that my heart thundered in my chest. Kaya stood up. Her expression shifted from tired to alert. She set down her water, straightened her shirt, and turned to me. Dad, lock the door. Stay inside. If things cross the line, call 911. I wanted to stop her, but she was already on the porch. Wilder didn't knock this time. He shouted from the lawn. Come out. This is an HOA enforcement matter. You don't have the right to hide in your house. Zinnia flinched. Carl stood still, as if praying this would end quickly. Kaye opened the door. No yelling, no backing down. She stood tall, one hand on the doorframe, the other relaxed at her side, but I knew. That was her ready stance. I'm inside a private residence. You have no right to demand anything. You're not law enforcement. I've already filed a report with Internal Affairs regarding your prior physical assault. Wilder smirked. You really think the system will side with your kind? He didn't need to explain it. I heard the hate in every syllable. And then, He did the unthinkable. He drew a gun. A black Glock 19, something no HOA officer should ever carry. No badge. No warrant. Just the barrel, pointed straight at Kaya. Senia screamed. Carl raised his hands, and I stood frozen behind the door. On the ground, you're under arrest for assaulting a community enforcer. His voice shook, but it was loud. His hand trembled, but he held firm on the trigger. Kaya didn't move. I didn't see fear. I saw a calculation. She was measuring distance, wind, angle, his eye movement. The reactions of the two behind him, Carl, almost in tears. Zenia, trembling. You are committing a felony. This is an armed, premeditated threat. If you pull that trigger, you're facing 20 years minimum, maybe worse. She wasn't begging. She was informing him of the law. Wilder screamed and swung the gun. That was all Kaya needed. One fluid lunge, a wrist twist, a side kick to the hip, the gun dropped. She grabbed his arm, flipped him to the ground, pinned him with a shoulder lock. The Glock is now in her hand. Carl stepped back. Zinnia stood frozen, mouth open. Wilder, face buried in grass, wailed in rage. You have no idea what you just did. Kaya's voice was cold. Dad, call the police. Tell them, armed suspect, weapons secured, situation, stable officers needed immediately. I obeyed, hands shaking, not out of fear, but because I knew the real war with the HOA had just begun. As the patrol car rolled onto our street, I finally exhaled. Kaya was still calmly pinning Wilder to the grass, his gun disarmed, safety engaged, magazine removed. She knelt with one knee down, his arm locked behind his back, composed, precise, almost unnervingly still. The police were here. Surely now, things would be resolved. Right. Officer Rodriguez stepped out first, young, sharp-eyed, hands hovering near his holster but not reaching. He approached and asked curtly, "What's the situation?" Kaya answered like she was reporting a battlefield debrief. Assailant has been subdued. Weapon is a Glock 19 magazine removed. Safety on. No secondary weapon. No immediate threat. Rodriguez nodded. He accepted the weapon, checked it quickly, then leaned down to cuff Wilder, who was still thrashing and shouting like a man wrongly accused. She attacked me. She's dangerous fascist traitor. The second officer, a Latina woman named Martinez, stepped in to assist. Together, they escorted Wilder to the squad car and loaded him into the back seat. Kaya stepped away, hands clearly visible, every movement deliberate to avoid misinterpretation. I let out a shaky breath. Neighbors started gathering on porches, behind windows. Mrs. Henderson from across the street gave Kaya a thumbs up of quiet thanks. It seemed, finally, like it might be over, until the second SUV rolled into the street, and a familiar face stepped out. Nancy Weber, HOA president, flawless makeup, white blazer, silver-framed sunglasses, stilettos clicking on the asphalt like she was walking down Wall Street. Beside her, Police Chief James Thompson, broad face, silver mustache, the same man who'd smiled widely in last month's HOA fundraising photos. Nancy didn't greet anyone. She spared Kaya a single glance, then marched straight to Rodriguez. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Wilder's an HOA security member, granted authority by our board. That girl has a record of disruption. We have internal documentation. And she just assaulted an officer during his duties. Thompson stepped forward and clapped Rodriguez on the shoulder. Why don't you hand this one over to me? Son, I'll take it from here. His voice was firm. Not a suggestion. An order disguised as experience. Kaya stepped up. I was threatened at gunpoint. I disarmed the weapon to protect myself. He had no warrant, no authority, and he laid hands on me before drawing his weapon at my head. Thompson didn't look at her. He muttered through clenched teeth. We've got witness statements saying you have a history of aggression. In chaotic situations like this, it's hard to tell who escalated things. Rodriguez hesitated. Sir, the weapon's illegal. Wilder had no permit. We also have witnesses confirming Kaya acted in self-defense. Nancy cut in. The weapon was a prop for demonstration purposes. Mr. Wilder had no intent to fire, just a visual deterrent to keep order. I felt my blood boil. He pointed a real gun at my daughter's head. He stormed onto our property and pulled a live weapon. And now you're calling it a prop. Thompson finally turned to look at me. His eyes were cold, condescending, as if to say, you really think you stand a chance here? And then it happened. The worst thing he could have done. He uncuffed Wilder. He handed the gun back. We've reviewed the situation. There's no evidence of an actual attack. Miss Kaya might want to consider relocating before things get difficult for her and her family. The whole block fell silent. Eyes turned to Thompson. Then Nancy, where's Juan? See? Then Wilder, now standing tall again, as if he hadn't just been shoved into the dirt 20 minutes ago. Then Mayo, quietly. Zanaya, the woman who'd come with Wilder earlier, stepped forward. Her voice shook. I'm sorry, but I'm a witness. I saw him draw the gun. I heard the threats. She didn't do anything wrong. Nancy gave her a sideways glare. If you plan to continue working in this community, I'd choose my words carefully. The threat was plain. No more subtext. No more disguises. That night, as we filed our report at the police station, a passing officer eyed us with thinly veiled suspicion. Thompson entered the station, didn't greet a soul, grabbed the case file, and vanished into his private office. Minutes later, a younger officer returned. The case has been reclassified as an internal HOA matter. No charges will be filed. Kaya sat motionless. I saw her hand clenched, her jaw tight, like she was pushing every ounce of fury into a silent corner of herself. Dad, she finally said, this isn't about a parking space anymore. This is a network designed to make people like us too afraid to speak. I could only nod, because in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen since she left the military. Rage tempered by strategy. The next morning, I stepped onto the porch, hadn't even brewed my coffee, and saw it taped to the front door. A plain white sheet, printed in bold black ink. Notice of violation, overstayed parking, non-compliant landscaping, unauthorized equipment installation. Total fine, water nash, $250. Payment due. 7 days. I held the paper in silence. My lawn had been mowed on Wednesday. The security cameras Kaya installed hadn't even been powered up yet. And the Jeep, it had been gone since the afternoon before. This wasn't enforcement. This was retaliation. That same day, 3 more violation slips landed in our mailbox. Moss exceeding 5 mm on exterior wall. Front porch flower species not indigenous. Downspout angle outside technical standard. Total fines so far, 300. All in less than 48 hours since Wilder had been subdued. Kaya read each notice. Expression unreadable. But I saw her hands trembling, not from fear, but from fury. They're using administrative tactics to force us out, she muttered. And they think we'll just pay quietly, like every other resident they've bullied. I nodded. We'd seen this happen to others, but now it was pointed straight at our house. The following week became a waking nightmare. Every morning, a new violation. Every evening, a stranger in an HOA uniform appeared out front, holding an iPad, snapping photos silently, like paparazzi stalking a scandal. Thursday, our water was shut off. Reason given. Neighborhood pipe maintenance. Only our house was affected. That afternoon, another notice arrived. Privately installed surveillance system not approved by the HOA technical board. Violation of Clause 6. Mufford to security 1 firm. 3. Unregistered monitoring devices. Mafradurari ignorantum. $850. That night, Kaya sat silently in the living room. Laptop open. Tirelnarn. Fingers flying. I'm building a dossier, she said. Every citation, every incident, every person approaching our house, it's all being documented. I'm going to expose them for what they are. An HOA machine that uses fake authority to harass, discriminate, and control. When I asked if we should call a lawyer, Kaya nodded. I already did. West Seward term. Michael Chen, an old classmate, civil rights attorney, specializes in HOA abuse and minority harassment cases. That Friday evening, just as dusk fell, we got another gift. An emergency notice from the HOA. Resident Kaya Carter has been deemed a potential threat to community safety. Under Charter 9, even if fornen. 2. A motion for expulsion from Sunny Pines will be voted on at next week's special HOA session. It was sent to every resident by email, Teresa Wimmerman, and as hard copies dropped into every mailbox. The next day, the neighbors started looking at us differently. No more nods from the porch. No more polite smiles in passing. Just avoided glances. Or worse, silent suspicion. Only one person dared to knock on our door. Zenaya Ramirez, the therapist who had once come with Wilder. She brought flowers and whispered, I'm sorry. They told me Kaya was a military deserter, that she was dangerous to the community. Freenarn, I was stupid to believe it. Kaya didn't blame her. She just nodded gently. They have a system. They know how to spread fear. But the more a corrupt system operates, the more it exposes its weak points. That afternoon, our power was cut. Re-renifying, amen, for reason. Technical hazard due to improper grounding. Only our house in the Winurasurum discern. Kaya wasn't surprised. She drew the curtain aside, pointed toward the street. Wilder just drove by. Headlights pointed straight through our window. This is the message. We can do whatever we want. You either bow your head or get out. I sat there in the dark. Stacks of citations in front of me. Behind me, my daughter, a former SEAL instructor, is plotting her next move. And I knew there was no going back now. Monday morning, as I stepped out to grab the paper, something strange happened. A plain white envelope, no address, no stamp, lay quietly on our doorstep. Inside was a single handwritten note. I was fined 5 times in 2 weeks for hanging a national flag during the off-season. But I stayed quiet because I was afraid. She's not afraid. If you need a witness, I'm ready. Signed. A resident on Sycamore Lane. I read it, then handed it to Kaya. She didn't say a word, just nodded and slipped it into the ever-growing binder labeled HOA misconduct evidence. That afternoon, we received 2 more anonymous emails. One person wrote about being threatened with losing pool access, simply for asking to see the HOA's financial reports. Another said their home was inspected every week after they voiced opposition to a fee increase. Kaya created a secure email account. Sunny Truth Proton Mail. She printed out flyers and quietly dropped one in every mailbox under the cover of night. Have you ever felt targeted by the HOA? Unjustly fined, surveilled, or silenced? You're not alone. Every submission is confidential. Share your story. Within 72 hours, the inbox received over 40 responses. Most were from people we thought had stayed silent out of agreement. Turns out they'd stayed silent out of fear. Mrs. Gonzalez Horner, a single mother of 3, wrote, Wilder banned my kids from the communal lawn for being too loud. The next day, I saw Nancy's grandson playing soccer there. No one said a word. Mr. Patel, an Indian-American software engineer, shared, I was fined for unfamiliar aromas coming from my kitchen during lunch hour. They said my spices were disruptive to the community aesthetic. I stayed quiet for fear of losing my home. Each story was another crack in Sunny Pine's glossy veneer. And Kaya, she didn't waste a single one. She brought in Michael Chen, the civil rights lawyer. to meet face to face with those ready to speak up. They held secret gatherings. In Mr. George's garage, in a back room at the town library, sometimes even behind the laundromat after 9 p.m. What I once thought was a personal battle was clearly something else. A system. A system where Nancy writes the rules. Wilder enforces them through fear. Chief Thompson shields it all from above. Anyone who pushes back isn't fighting one man. They're up against a triangle of power, protected by money, connections, and silence. Kaya saw it, and she began plotting a counterattack. I don't want to fight every ticket, she said one night, outlining a web of connections on paper. I want to prove the entire HOA structure is illegal, designed to discriminate, oppress, and manipulate this community. Michael laid out the legal plan. Acquire original HOA documents, especially internal bylaws, budget records, and recent shady amendments. Uncover any evidence of embezzlement or self-dealing. File a case with the State Attorney General under the Community Abuse Clause, targeting HOAs operating beyond their legal bounds. But the first step was trust. Kaya hosted the first anonymous meeting at Mrs. Patel's house, under the guise of a tea gathering for new neighbors. Nearly 15 people showed up nervous, hesitant, but all of them shared one look in their eyes. They were waiting for a leader, and now they had one. Kaya laid out the plan. Everyone writes down their story. Take photos of their violation slips, threatening emails, or any other evidence. If brave enough, record conversations with Wilder or HOA agents. By the end, Mrs. Gonzalez hugged Kaya, tears running down her face. You're the first one who didn't run. And because of you, we found the courage to step outside again. That night, as we returned home, we found a small cardboard box on our doorstep. No name. No note, Silmarsoin. Inside, a photocopy of the original 1992 HOA charter, with handwritten annotations. The last page was underlined in red. Any amendment requires approval by at least 75% of residents. No exceptions. Kaya smiled. Nancy just shot herself in the foot. That new expulsion rule they're trying to vote on next week. It's illegal. Saturday afternoon, HOA flyers appeared on every corner of Sunny Pines. Emergency meeting, review of the Carter family's severe violations. Time. Sting, sir. Render to the verse 30 p.m. Community Hall. Agenda. Did needed a fire? Vote for expulsion under Article 9. Cedar year and a sibrin, penny. Tricky. It was less a meeting than a public tribunal. Presided over by Nancy Weber. Secured by Wilder. And bound together by one thing. Entrance of fear by 6. Zero serpent. The parking lot was full. Residents poured in with mixed expressions. Curiosity. Unease. Skepticism. Anger. Some came because they wanted the Carters gone. Some came because they'd never seen someone dare to stand up. Nancy stood at the front of the room, tapping her gavel like a judge in a courtroom. Wilder sat to her right, black sunglasses, chin raised like the disgrace of being tackled to the grass had never happened. Behind them, a projected slide read, Community Safety, Addressing Emerging Threats. A dressed-up way of labeling a woman of color as dangerous for daring to resist. Kaya and I walked in. She wore a plain white blouse, hair tied back, no jewelry, only a thick binder, and Michael Chen, our civil rights lawyer. The room fell silent. People avoided eye contact, as if truth had become too blinding to face directly. Nancy began. We are not here today out of personal spite, but for the safety of our community, resident Kaya Carter has repeatedly violated regulations, resisted enforcement, and caused emotional unrest among neighbors. We move to vote on expulsion under Article 9. Aimee Kaya raised her hand. Her voice was steady, crystal clear. I request the right to speak, as granted by Article 7. Quiniern, Yersten ones. 3 of the original 1992 HOA charter. The right to rebut before disciplinary voting. Nancy's brow arched. But before she could object, Mr. George Williams, a longtime resident, stood up. I confirm the original charter allows it. I helped draft that document back in the day. No one objected. Nancy reluctantly nodded. 3 minutes. No more. Michael stepped forward, opening the binder. His voice was calm, cold, and deliberate. We have documented 37 cases of residents fined without transparency, lacking evidence, or targeted based on race, income, or background. He clicked the remote. Slides appeared. Mrs. Gonzalez, fined because her kids were too loud, while Nancy's grandchild played soccer undisturbed. The Patel family, fined for cooking smells, while Wilder's BBQ went unchecked. The Johnsons, Yuasin, lost their wheelchair ramp ruled aesthetic disruption. Tumo. This isn't regulation enforcement. It's systematic abuse. Nancy interrupted. We will not tolerate political grandstanding in this community. Michael didn't flinch. I'm talking law, not politics. But if you want politics, let me continue. Next slide. Financial documents from public records. 75 bahar. Shuasho 1 year spent on security services, aka Wilder's salary. $120,000 for development consulting paid to Nancy's grandson's firm. $40,000 in landscape inspections contracted to Police Chief Thompson's cousin. The room erupted in murmurs. People whispered, "Is this real? They spent our dues like this." Then Kaya stepped forward. And for the first time, she spoke. With a tone so commanding, the room fell utterly still. I served in the military. There, I learned that rules exist for the collective good, not to shield privilege. I didn't come here to destroy this neighborhood. I came to claim my equal right to live in it. Nancy opened her mouth, but George stood again. I moved to suspend the vote and launch an internal investigation into financial abuse and discriminatory enforcement. Because if you don't, I'll file with civil court first thing tomorrow. Many people nodded. For the first time, not out of fear, Nancy slammed her gavel. This meeting is suspended. Her voice shook. Wilder stood to speak, but no one stood with him. That night, as we walked out of the community hall, the first person to greet us was Mr. Patel. My son, he saw you standing up there tonight. He asked me, is she a real superhero? Dad, I said, no, she's just a person. Nari on Mondanas Hamashorn Cine, but a brave one. Kaya smiled softly and replied, heroes only matter if they inspire others to stand, too. The first storm has just begun. But now, I'm not standing alone anymore. 3 days after the community hearing, Kaya's HOA evidence folder had grown by nearly 100 pages. Each page, a puzzle piece. Bogus repair invoices 3 times the standard price. Threatening emails sent from an anonymous account IP traced right back to the HOA office computer. Budget documents with file timestamps altered. The same day Michael requested the originals. Nancy and Wilder knew they were being exposed, and they had no intention of going quietly. Wednesday afternoon, an unmarked car parked outside our home. A new citation was left under the windshield. Warning: drainage system fails seismic safety code. An inspection will be conducted. Failure to comply may result in a $5,000 fine. No signature. No delivery person. Just a veiled threat. That evening, our front porch light was smashed. No one saw who did it, but neighbors said a man in a black cap had been circling the neighborhood around 100. The next day, I received an email. You should leave before things get out of hand. This is a neighborhood, not a military base. Signed. A friend of the community. Michael Chen wasn't surprised. They know they can't win with the law, so they're turning to fear, which only means we're getting close. Kaya counterattacked with information. She designed a simple two-sided flyer and delivered it to every mailbox. List of HOA spending violations. Names of shell companies receiving community funds. Step-by-step instructions on how to file a complaint with the State Civil Rights Office. She titled it, "The Survival Guide for Living Under a Corrupt HOA." Nancy reacted like a cornered animal. She held a closed-door emergency meeting, inviting only her loyal residents. According to accounts from inside, she declared, "Carter is trying to dismantle our ecosystem. If we don't act now, we lose everything." Wilder added, "We have ways to make them leave, quietly or not." The next morning, our security cameras were ripped down. The plants in our front yard uprooted. Our mailbox stuffed with garbage, stinking like a threat wrapped in rot. Kaya didn't get angry. She calmly replaced every camera with infrared night vision models and offline backup storage. Then she shared photos of Wilder loitering near our gate to the community email list. Cinia, the psychologist who once backed Wilder, was now one of Kaya's fiercest allies. She organized a town library meeting, where she publicly said, "I once believed in the HOA, but now I see I enabled people who manipulate through fear. No one deserves to live under constant surveillance." Over 30 residents attended. 10 signed a petition demanding a financial audit of the HOA. Nancy responded with her final move. A lawsuit. A 12-page letter arrived at our doorstep, drafted by the HOA's attorney. The Carter family is charged with disturbing the peace, defaming HOA leadership, unauthorized equipment installation, hosting unapproved gatherings. They demanded a $1,500 fine, removal of all public complaints, voluntary departure from Sunny Pines within 14 days. Michael just chuckled. Perfect. Now we have legal grounds to countersue. He filed a countersuit for abuse of power, racial discrimination, systematic harassment, resident intimidation, misappropriation of public HOA funds. The complaint was submitted to the county civil court, and a copy was sent to the FBI. Meanwhile, Wilder, like a beast off its leash, spiraled out of control. He was caught, standing outside Mrs. Gonzalez's house at 2A, screaming in front of the community center, calling Kaya a skirt-wearing traitor, sending spam emails laced with graphic threats of violence. Everything was documented. Every message, "You're one out of the one such one." Every scream. Judgment Day came earlier than expected. Police Chief Thompson received a letter from the State Attorney General's office, formally requesting a federal investigation. Enclosed. Documents compiled by Kaya and Michael, co-signed by over 40 Sunny Pines residents. Wilder's license was suspended. Nancy was forced to step down as HOA president during the investigation. The HOA's bank account was frozen for an independent audit. When we got the news, Kaya simply smiled. They thought they were the current, but forgot one thing. A whirlpool only works when no one dares to swim upstream. Now the entire River One is reversing. One early summer morning, the news hit like a thunderclap. Show President Nancy Weber and self-appointed security chief Nero Wilder indicted for tribunal at subsidiary of Power Warnas Suridia 1. Resident intimidation. Faryim Wursuri in Mayor 1, financial fraud. Suriyorn, systematic harassment. The headline looped on the local news all week. And every time it played, I saw neighbors standing on their porches, not out of curiosity, but because someone had finally spoken the truth for them. And that someone was my daughter. Wilder was arrested at home, still wearing his old tracksuit, stained with ink from his forged citation slips. As the officers led him away, Kaya stood at the window, eyes locked on the scene. He once pointed a gun at my face. Now I didn't have to lift a finger. Justice did it for me. Nancy's story unfolded differently. She showed up in court wearing a pale gray suit. No makeup, no pearls, just empty eyes. Faced with documents, witness statements, and digital proof, she pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. 2 years probation, 3-year ban from serving on any residential board, ordered to repay $312,000 in embezzled HOA funds. The court ordered a full audit of Sunny Pines. The results shocked everyone. Nearly 60% of HOA spending lacked proper receipts. Over 20 families were coerced into unjust fines. At least 9 households were driven out through harassment and forced devaluation campaigns. A new oversight board was formed. 7 residents, including Kaya, Mrs. Gonzalez, Mr. George Williams, and Zanaya. "We're not here to destroy the HOA," Kaya said at their first meeting. "We're here to rebuild it from the roots. With transparency, fairness, and humanity." In just the first month, they wiped out all illegitimate fines from the past 5 years, cut wasteful spending, lowering HOA fees to their lowest since 2001, established a resident protection hotline, and most symbolically lifted all-time restrictions on kids playing outside. The plants ripped out of our yard, replanted by the very residents who once looked away. Flags once banned for aesthetic violations now flew freely. American flags, LGBTQ+ flags, even local soccer team banners. Sunny Pines, at last, felt like home. I remember one afternoon after the first policy planning session, a young boy ran up and hugged Kaya. "You're the reason I believe I can do something when I grow up." She knelt, ruffling his hair. "You already have, you dared to dream." That's step one. Michael Chen, now a legal advisor to more than 10 other HOAs statewide, joked, "Kaya didn't just topple Nancy, she flipped the whole outdated HOA model and made it a national case study." The Sunny Pines story was picked up by national outlets. The Atlantic, the Washington Post, everywhere mentioned one name: Kaya Carter, a new symbol of grassroots justice. A state bill was introduced, named the Carter Act, to protect residents from HOA overreach. If passed, it would become California's first law requiring quarterly financial transparency for all HOAs, independent resident oversight boards, bans on leadership roles for anyone previously reported for harassment or discrimination. On the day the bill was introduced, Kaya didn't wear her military uniform. She wore a sky blue shirt and held the hand of a young Indian boy once fined by Wilder for talking too loud. That evening, we held a picnic in the Central Park, a space that used to be off limits after 8 p.m. The kids built a campfire. The adults told stories, and Kaya read aloud from a journal entry she wrote the night after being threatened. "I never wanted revenge. I just wanted to build a place where no one had to learn how to suffer in silence. I looked at my daughter, not as a soldier, not just a survivor of oppression, but as an architect of change. Amid the golden light and joyful laughter," I whispered, "they once used the HOA as a weapon to control. You turned it into a tool to protect." Kaya paused. She looked at the neighbors laughing, smiling, and finally said, "The greatest victory wasn't watching them fall. It was seeing this community rise. They once used guns, rules, and titles to silence a woman who dared to stand. But they forgot one truth. Alone, you might be weak, but if you inspire others, a whole community will stand beside you." Kaya never needed revenge. She just needed the truth spoken at the right moment. And now, Sunny Pines is no longer a place of fear. It's become a model for thousands of HOAs across America struggling with corruption. If you've ever lived under a rotten HOA, don't stay silent. Share your story. Comment below with your state and how your HOA operates. Like, share, and subscribe, so you don't miss the next chapter of organized karma, delivered with justice.